6 seconds. Recent research tells us that a recruiter may look at your resume for only 6 seconds before deciding whether or not to continue reading. That's not much time. So what do we do on our resumes to make sure that the recruiter will keep looking? Well, the first thing to think about is, what's the purpose of the resume? The resume really has only one purpose. It's great that it sells you, it's great that it convinces them about how wonderful you are, but its real purpose is simply to make sure that they call you in for the interview. So let's talk about some of the things a resume should have on it. The first thing is it should have your contact information, of course. You don't need a lot of phone numbers, just include the phone that you use. For most of us, that's a cell phone. You don't need your street address. City and state is usually sufficient. Then we have a banner statement. Now, it used to be we had objectives. We don't use objectives anymore. The banner statement may be something as simple as bank manager. It may have a little bit more to it, like production worker with expertise in plastics and aluminum. It might have a couple of sentences, but not too much. Just enough to let the employer know what it is that you're looking for. And that might change from resume to resume. After your banner statement, have a section that tells about your skills or your abilities. They might be professional skills such as communication or emotional intelligence. They might be tools you've used, power tools, different types of saws. Have those all listed. Maybe it's different programs you've operated. After your abilities section, you might have a summary of your accomplishments or achievements. Those are great to tell employers about. And finally, of course, you're going to talk about your work history, or your employment history, your career history. Any of those titles will work. Talk about experience for about the last 10 to 15 years. Now, you'll also have an education or a training section, or maybe both. On those, we typically don't include dates unless the training or the education was in the last 5 years or so. Otherwise, it dates you. Something we don't put on resumes anymore is references available upon request. Or, as I used to put it, excellent references available upon request. We just don't use that anymore. Remember, 6 seconds. We have to catch the employer's attention in a short period of time, and we can't waste any space with the obvious stuff. Now, there are a few don'ts on your resume. For example, don't have any typos, no errors. Have somebody else proofread your resume. I sent one out for about 6 months that had a typo on it, and spell check didn't catch it because it was a real word. So make sure somebody else is looking at your resume besides you to make sure that you've got that accurate. Another thing you want to make sure you don't have is anything that's a capitalization error. Okay. Another thing to look out for is capitalization errors. South Bend, for example, you need to have a capital S and a capital B. Something that's happened over time is we're texting people. We're using all kinds of other social media, and we don't care about punctuation anymore. How often do we capitalize the word I? But on a resume, it all has to be right. It all has to be capitalized properly. It all has to be spelled properly. We have to avoid major abbreviations, except for numbers. Numbers, it's great to have the number 4 or the number 17 or the number 37,000 instead of writing it out. That's a change from how resumes used to be written. I'm going to give you a couple of stylistic tips for resumes. These aren't the types of things that'll get you eliminated if you don't follow the tips, but they kind of tell people you're savvy about how resumes are written. For example, we don't typically use full sentences. We don't start with I or our or my or we. We typically start right in with a verb. For example, tackled large projects, or operated forklift, or built RVs. We start right with a verb and we go strongly from there. Another thing we typically don't do is we don't use articles. Articles are things like a, an, and the. So I can say operated forklift rather than operated a forklift, or built RVs rather than built the RVs at this particular plant. There's so many opinions about resumes, it's hard to please everybody, and you probably can't. So ultimately, the resume should be something that you like, that follows these basic rules, and that gets you the interview. The resume is your advertisement. If it works, so will you.